The arrival of the Sovereign Armada. The skies above Earth shifted into an unnatural hue as the massive ship materialized, casting an ominous shadow over the Atlantic Ocean. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, its edges lined with pulsating blue lights. Humanity's first contact had arrived, not with curiosity or peace, but with an ultimatum. In the United Earth Command Center, Admiral Elijah Greaves stood motionless, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the massive screen that dominated the room. The murmurs of the assembled military and political leaders around him faded into the background as the screen flickered to life. An alien figure emerged, a towering creature draped in segmented armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Its elongated, inhuman face was framed by ridges that glowed faintly with an eerie bioluminescence. "I am Sovereign Executor Tyrax," the alien spoke, its voice unnervingly smooth yet resonant, as though two tones were layered atop one another. "Your planet has reached the threshold of significance. You will now decide your fate, submission or annihilation." The room went silent. Tyrax continued, pacing in his holographic form. "Your kind will kneel before the sovereign dominion. In exchange, you shall receive the privilege of survival. Resist, and you will be eradicated. You have one cycle to deliberate, approximately 72 of your Earth hours." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in a state of stunned silence. Greaves turned to face the room. "They're giving us a choice," he said, his voice calm but cold, "but it's not a choice at all." Earth's response. World leaders convened in an emergency session, their differences set aside in the face of an existential threat. Arguments erupted, but Admiral Greaves, flanked by General Cora Daniels and Dr. Alaric Hayes, the leading scientist of Earth's Defense Initiative, silenced them with a simple, deliberate question. "Do we bow, or do we fight?" "We can't fight them," one politician protested. "Their technology is centuries ahead. We've seen their ship. It dwarfs anything we have." "And what do you think will happen if we submit?" General Daniels shot back. "Do you believe they'll stop at submission? They'll strip our resources, enslave us, and leave us as hollow shells of what we once were." Dr. Hayes stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "We have 3 days. We can't match their firepower, but we don't have to. We need to think beyond the battlefield. We need to outwit them." A spark of defiance. In the hours that followed, Earth's greatest minds worked in feverish unison. The United Earth Defense Command became a hive of activity, with scientists, engineers, and strategists pooling their knowledge. Hayes and his team discovered a crucial detail hidden within the Sovereign's transmission, a faint but detectable resonance in their signal. It was a vulnerability, a crack in their otherwise impenetrable facade. "Every advanced system has a backdoor," Hayes explained to the room. "This resonance, it's a carrier wave embedded in their communication network. If we exploit it, we might be able to disrupt their systems." General Daniels, ever the pragmatist, wasn't convinced. "Even if we can disrupt their communications, that doesn't stop their fleet from turning Earth into a wasteland." Greaves interjected. "It doesn't have to, if we can blind them. Sow confusion, we buy ourselves time. Time to develop something they won't expect. The hidden weapon." Meanwhile, in a remote base buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a secret project codenamed Phoenix Protocol was revived. It was humanity's last-ditch contingency, a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen. Powered by experimental quantum fusion, it was designed to disrupt matter at the molecular level. The catch: it had never been tested. "The Phoenix Protocol is a gamble," Dr. Hayes admitted, addressing the team. "But it's a gamble we might have to take." Greaves nodded. "Then we make it ready, no matter the cost." A message for the Sovereign. As Earth scrambled to prepare, Admiral Greaves made a bold decision. He ordered a counter-transmission to Sovereign Executor Tyrax. The alien's image reappeared, his glowing eyes narrowing as he regarded the human leader. "You dare address the sovereign dominion?" Tyrax hissed, his voice tinged with disdain. Greaves stood firm, his voice steady. "We've received your message, and we have an answer." Tyrax leaned closer, his features twisting into what could only be described as amusement. "Do you now? I assume it is surrender." "No," Greaves replied, his tone sharp. "Humanity doesn't kneel. We stand, we fight, and if necessary, we die free. But we won't bow." The room braced for Tyrax's response. Instead, the alien chuckled, a deep mechanical sound. "Foolish creatures," he said. "Your defiance will only ensure your extinction. In 3 days, the Sovereign Armada will arrive. Prepare to be purged." The transmission ended, but Greaves remained resolute. He turned to his team. "They think we're weak. They think they've already won. Let's prove them wrong." The countdown begins. Across the planet, preparations reached a fever pitch. Civilians were evacuated to underground shelters, and factories were repurposed overnight to produce weapons and defenses. Hackers worked alongside military tech teams to infiltrate the Sovereign network, while scientists raced to complete the Phoenix Protocol. Dr. Hayes, staring at the holographic display of Tyrax's ship, whispered to himself, "They've underestimated us." Admiral Greaves, standing at the observation deck overlooking the bustling command center, clenched his fists. "Let them come," he muttered. "Humanity has faced extinction before, and we're still here." As the final hours ticked away, Earth stood united in a way it hadn't in centuries. The battle ahead was daunting, the odds insurmountable. But humanity had one thing the Sovereign Dominion didn't understand: a spirit that refused to break. The Phantom Network. The Earth's command center buzzed with frenetic energy as humanity prepared for the inevitable arrival of the Sovereign Armada. Deep within the labyrinthine halls of the United Earth Defense Complex, Dr. Alaric Hayes worked tirelessly alongside a team of cyber specialists. They were Earth's best chance at striking first, silently and invisibly, through the Sovereign's most unexpected weakness, their own network. The resonance weakness. Hayes tapped furiously at his console, lines of alien code streaming across the screen. The resonance signal, first detected in the Sovereign's transmission, was an ancient vulnerability masked within their highly advanced technology. It seemed the Sovereign had grown complacent, their systems reliant on unchallenged superiority. "This resonance isn't just a glitch," Hayes explained to the team surrounding him. "It's embedded in their entire communication network. If we can infiltrate and hijack their signal, we might not only disrupt their systems, but potentially turn their technology against them." "How much time do you need?" asked Captain Layla Hart, the commanding officer overseeing Earth's cyber division. Hayes sighed. "More than we have, but we can narrow the scope. If we focus on disabling their command systems during the initial strike, it could give us a critical advantage." Hart placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do what you need to do. We're counting on you." Building a united front. While Hayes and his team worked in secrecy, the rest of Earth's forces mobilized. General Cora Daniels led the coordination of the planetary defense grid. For the first time in history, humanity acted as one unified force. Old rivalries dissolved as countries contributed their best resources and minds to the effort. At an air base in Siberia, drone fleets equipped with experimental stealth tech were prepped for launch. In the Pacific, submarines armed with prototype railguns prowled beneath the waves. Satellite uplinks around the globe synchronized, creating a web of coordinated surveillance. Daniels stood in front of a massive holographic display, detailing the Sovereign's likely approach vectors. "We don't have to destroy them outright," she said to her assembled team. "We just need to hold them off long enough for Hayes and his people to cripple their systems. If we can disrupt their command structure, we force them into chaos, and chaos is where humans thrive." The rogue operative. As the planet prepared for war, an unexpected development unfolded. In a hidden location outside Johannesburg, South Africa, a former intelligence officer known only as Dax initiated a covert operation. Dax, a rogue operator with a reputation for unpredictability, had intercepted fragments of sovereign communication weeks before their official transmission. Now, armed with this stolen data, Dax operated independently, seeking to uncover the sovereign's hidden plans. His base, a repurposed mining facility, was crammed with outdated but functional tech, scavenged from across the globe. Hunched over a flickering terminal, Dax analyzed the intercepted signals, muttering to himself. "They're hiding something," he whispered. "Their entire approach is too bold, too certain. What aren't they telling us?" His fingers danced across the keyboard, decoding alien patterns and schematics. What he found sent a chill down his spine. The Sovereign weren't just coming with one ship. They were bringing an armada of automated war machines. Worse, a secondary signal suggested they had planted dormant agents on Earth long before their arrival. Sabotage and deception. At that very moment, an alert sounded in the defense complex. "We've been breached," a panicked technician yelled. The Sovereign had activated sleeper agents embedded within Earth's systems, triggering a cascade of failures across critical infrastructure. Admiral Greaves stormed into the control room, his face like stone. "What's the damage?" "Power grids in North America and Europe are going offline," the technician replied. "Our satellite network is also under attack. They're trying to blind us." Greaves slammed his fist on the console. "Get Hayes on this, now." Down in the cyber lab, Hayes and his team scrambled to isolate the breach. "They're good," Hayes admitted, sweat dripping down his brow. "But we're better. Reroute everything through the auxiliary network. We'll burn out every node if we have to." As the technicians worked to regain control, Hayes realized something critical. "They're testing us," he said aloud. "They're probing our defenses to see how we respond. This isn't the main event. It's the opening act." The Phantom network activates. Despite the setback, Hayes and his team achieved a breakthrough. By using the resonance signal, they created a stealth program that could infiltrate sovereign systems undetected. They called it Phantom. "This isn't just a virus," Hayes explained to Admiral Greaves and General Daniels during an emergency briefing. "It's a neural feedback disruptor. Once it enters their network, it'll amplify their own signals, turning their technology against them." "And what's the downside?" Greaves asked, his tone cautious. Hayes hesitated. "We only get one shot. If they detect it before it spreads, they'll isolate it and adapt. After that, we're back to square one." Greaves nodded grimly. "Then we make it count." Dax's warning. As Earth's leaders prepared to deploy Phantom, an unexpected message arrived at the defense complex, a scrambled transmission from Dax. His face appeared on the screen, shadowed and distorted. "You've got bigger problems than you think," he said, his voice sharp. "The Sovereign aren't just bringing their fleet. They've got ground operatives ready to act once the fight begins. If you don't root them out, you'll lose this war before it starts." The room fell silent. General Daniels leaned forward. "And how do you know this?" "Because I've been tracking them," Dax replied. "And I've got proof." The transmission cut out, leaving the team stunned. Greaves turned to Daniels. "Find him. If he's right, we need that intel yesterday." A race against time. With less than 48 hours remaining, humanity faced an uphill battle. The skies above Earth shimmered with the light of orbital defense satellites, while the oceans churned as fleets moved into position. On the ground, special ops teams were dispatched to locate and neutralize sovereign agents, using Dax's fragmented intel. In the cyber lab, Hayes activated Phantom for a final test. The holographic display showed the program weaving through simulated sovereign defenses. "It's working," he whispered, his voice tinged with both hope and fear. Admiral Greaves addressed the planet in a broadcast that night. His words were calm, yet resolute. "We face an enemy who believes we are weak. They underestimate what humanity is capable of when united. We've endured countless challenges, and we've always risen stronger. This time will be no different." As the countdown ticked closer to zero, one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer just defending its survival. It was fighting to prove that even in the vastness of the galaxy, there was no force more relentless than the human spirit. The Sovereign's shadow. The first stars of the Sovereign Armada began to appear in Earth's orbit, their massive silhouettes blocking out the light of distant constellations. The fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined, monolithic vessels that seemed more like floating fortresses than ships. Their hulls pulsed with a cold blue energy that radiated menace. To Earth's defenders, the sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Admiral Elijah Greaves stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, Resolute Dawn, his jaw tightening as he surveyed the approaching fleet through reinforced glass. Around him, officers scrambled to relay updates, their voices echoing in a cacophony of urgency. Graves turned to his second-in-command, Commander Ilara Voss. "They're testing our resolve," Graves said, his voice a low growl. "They want us to see their strength and fold before the first shot is fired." Voss nodded, "And they're going to learn what happens when they push humanity too far." The Armada's demands. The Sovereign transmission flickered to life once again, this time directly aboard the Resolute Dawn. Sovereign Executor Tyrax appeared, his holographic form towering and imposing. His crimson eyes swept across the bridge, as though he could see each individual present. "Admiral Greaves," Tyrax began, his voice carrying a note of mockery. "I admire your defiance, but it is misplaced. Your fleet is a collection of primitives, a dust storm attempting to stand against a hurricane. Surrender now, and I will allow your people to live, albeit as laborers for the Dominion." Greaves stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "You've made your offer, Tyrax, and you already know our answer." Tyrax's expression didn't change, but the glow of his eyes intensified. "Then you have chosen oblivion. The cleansing begins at dawn." The transmission cut out, and silence fell over the bridge. Greaves turned to his crew. "If they think we're afraid, they've already lost. Prepare the fleet for engagement. Phantom goes live." Deep below the Earth's surface, in the fortified Cyber Command Center, Dr. Alaric Hayes and his team finalized their preparations to deploy Phantom. The program was humanity's best hope of evening the odds, but Hayes couldn't shake the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "Are you sure about this, Doc?" asked Captain Layla Hart, standing beside him. "No," Hayes admitted, his hands hovering over the keyboard. "But this is all we've got. If it works, we can cripple their command systems and buy our forces a chance to fight. If it fails—" "We don't fail," Hart interrupted, her tone firm. "Not today." With a deep breath, Hayes initiated the program. Across the holographic display, lines of code lit up as Phantom infiltrated the Sovereign's network. The room held its collective breath as the program began to weave its way into the alien systems, searching for the resonance frequency that would trigger their downfall. Dax's counterstrike. Meanwhile, in the shadows of a decaying industrial complex on the outskirts of Johannesburg, Dax moved with precision. Armed with knowledge of the Sovereign sleeper agents, he had tracked their central node to an abandoned power station. The dimly lit interior was eerily quiet, save for the hum of alien machinery. Dax's sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the presence of Sovereign tech. Small, spider-like drones that scurried along the walls, their glowing eyes monitoring every corner. "You've been busy," Dax muttered to himself, pulling a small EMP grenade from his belt. "Let's see how you like this." With a quick flick, the grenade rolled across the floor, detonating in a burst of electromagnetic energy. The drones spanned and collapsed, their circuits fried. Dax sprinted to the main terminal, plugging in a device to download critical data. The screen flickered as streams of alien code filled the display. Dax's smirk faded as the data revealed something he hadn't anticipated. The Sovereign weren't just targeting Earth's defenses. They were planning to detonate a planet-wide EMP blast to cripple humanity's infrastructure entirely. "Well, that's not good," Dax muttered. He quickly relayed the information to General Daniels via his encrypted link. You might want to stop that ship, General. They've got a surprise waiting for you. The first shot. As dawn broke over Earth, the Sovereign Armada began its advance. From orbit, massive beams of energy lanced toward Earth's surface, targeting strategic locations. The first strike hit a military base in Australia, vaporizing it in an instant. The second beam streaked toward an orbital defense platform, destroying it in a blinding flash. On board the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Greaves issued the command, "Fire all batteries." The human fleet responded with a barrage of missiles and energy blasts, streaking toward the alien ships. The Sovereign vessels absorbed the first wave of fire effortlessly, their shields flaring but holding strong. "They're adapting to our weapons," Commander Voss warned. "Then we hit them where it hurts," Greaves replied. "Send the stealth drones in. Target their weaker ships. We need to find a crack in their armor." Phantom's first success. Back in the cyberlab, Hayes watched as Phantom began to work its magic. The holographic display showed Sovereign systems flickering, their network struggling to maintain cohesion. "It's working," Hayes whispered. "They're losing control of their lower-tier drones." Across the battlefield, Sovereign drones began to malfunction, their movements erratic. One by one, they turned on their own fleet, firing wildly and causing confusion among the enemy ranks. Admiral Greaves seized the opportunity. "Focus all fire on their disrupted ships. Take them down before they recover." The human fleet pressed the advantage, destroying several smaller Sovereign vessels. For the first time, the tides of battle seemed to shift. The Dominion's retaliation, but the Sovereign were not so easily defeated. From the heart of the Armada, Tyrax's flagship unleashed a devastating counterattack. A massive wave of energy radiated outward, disabling Earth's orbital satellites and plunging the planet into partial darkness. "We just lost half our surveillance network," a technician shouted. Greaves gritted his teeth. "Pull back the fleet. Regroup behind the lunar defense line. We're not finished yet." As the fleet retreated, Hayes received a message from Dax. The rogue operative's findings confirmed the worst. Tyrax's flagship carried the EMP device capable of wiping out Earth's defenses entirely. "We need to take out that ship," Hayes said urgently. "If they activate the EMP, it's over." Greaves nodded grimly. "Then we take the fight to them." The fight for survival. The battle had only just begun, but humanity had already shown what it was capable of. The Sovereign Armada loomed large, their power immense, but Earth's defenders fought with a resilience that the aliens had not anticipated. As the countdown to the EMP detonation began, humanity's fate hung by a thread. But one thing was clear. The Sovereign had made a grave mistake in underestimating the indomitable spirit of humanity. The heart of the Sovereign. The Sovereign flagship loomed over Earth like a harbinger of doom, its colossal structure casting a shadow that stretched across the curvature of the planet. The ship, Dominus Ultima, was not just a vessel. It was a fortress, the nerve center of the entire Sovereign Armada. Within its armored walls, Sovereign Executor Tyrax stood at the command dais, his crimson eyes glowing with cold certainty. "Prepare the device," Tyrax commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber. "The humans' defiance ends now." A desperate mission. Far below, in the United Earth Command Center, Admiral Greaves and his team reviewed Dax's intercepted data. On the central screen, a three-dimensional model of the Dominus Ultima rotated slowly, highlighting its vulnerabilities, or lack thereof. "This ship isn't just the command center," Dr. Alaric Hayes explained, pointing to the schematics. "It's also housing the EMP weapon. If it detonates, every electronic system on Earth will be fried. No communication, no defenses, no infrastructure." "How long until detonation?" General Cora Daniels asked, her voice tense. 2 hours, maybe less," Hayes replied. "We have one shot at this. The EMP generator is located here." He pointed to a section of the ship heavily shielded by layers of armor. "If we can disable it, we might stand a chance. Admiral Greaves turned to his team. We'll need a strike team, small, fast, and capable of infiltrating their flagship. Volunteers only. I'm going, said Captain Leilahart without hesitation. If we don't stop that thing, nothing else we do matters. Greaves nodded. You'll lead the team. Get what you need and be ready in 30 minutes. Aboard the Resolute Dawn. As the infiltration team prepared, the Resolute Dawn maneuvered closer to the edge of Earth's orbit. The ship's stealth field shimmered faintly as it masked their approach to the Sovereign Armada. In the hangar, Captain Hart's team gathered, each member checking their gear with meticulous care. Listen up, Hart began, her voice steady and commanding. This mission isn't about glory. It's about survival. We're going into the heart of the enemy's fleet, and there's no guarantee we're coming back. But if we succeed, we give Earth a fighting chance. If we fail, we're all dead anyway. Her team nodded in grim understanding. Among them was Sergeant Elias Kane, a demolitions expert, and Dr. Ria Mehta, a specialist in alien technology. Both had been handpicked for their expertise and unflinching resolve. The silent approach. Hart's strike team launched in a modified stealth shuttle, its engines running on silent mode. The shuttle darted through the void, weaving between the massive Sovereign vessels like a needle through fabric. Inside, the team sat in silence, their faces lit only by the faint glow of the shuttle's instruments. Approaching the flagship, the pilot whispered, his voice barely audible. Their sensors haven't picked us up yet. Hart nodded. Hold steady. Take us in close to the docking bay. The shuttle latched onto the hull of the Dominus Ultima, its magnetic clamps securing their position. Hart activated the cutting laser, creating a small entry point into the ship. As the team slipped inside, they found themselves in a dimly lit corridor, the walls pulsing with an eerie blue light. Stay quiet, Hart ordered. We move fast and stick to the plan. The belly of the beast. Navigating the labyrinthine halls of the Dominus Ultima was no small feat. The Sovereign's technology seemed alive, with conduits and panels shifting and pulsing as if responding to their presence. Dr. Mehta paused to scan a nearby console, her portable device decoding the alien interface. They're aware of an anomaly, she whispered. We've got limited time before they figure out where we are. Then we'd better move, Kane said, hefting his pack of explosives. The team pushed forward, avoiding patrols of Sovereign drones. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The hum of the ship grew louder, and the temperature rose as they neared the core. This is it, Mehta said, stopping before a massive door sealed with alien glyphs. The EMP generator is just beyond this point. Sabotage and sacrifice. Hart placed her hand on the door's surface, feeling the vibrations beneath her palm. How do we get it open? I can hack it, Mehta replied, already working on her device. But it'll take a minute. Make it quick, Hart said, motioning for the others to take defensive positions. As Mehta worked, the ship seemed to come alive. Alarms blared, and Sovereign drones converged on their location. Kane set up a series of trip mines along the corridor. This'll buy us some time, he said, stepping back as the first wave of drones approached. The mines detonated in a blinding flash, destroying the initial wave of attackers, but more followed. The team fought with precision and determination, their weapons barely holding off the relentless assault. It's open, Mehta shouted, the massive door sliding aside to reveal the EMP generator, a colossal sphere of energy encased in crystalline armor. Kane sprinted forward, planting explosives around the generator. These charges will take it out, but we need to get clear first. A race against time. As the team prepared to retreat, a towering figure emerged from the shadows, an armored Sovereign enforcer. Its blade-like appendages glinted in the dim light as it charged toward them. Hart fired her weapon, but the creature was fast, deflecting the shots with ease. Go, Kane shouted, stepping forward to engage the enforcer. I'll hold it off. Kane, no. Hart yelled, but the sergeant was already fighting the creature, his movements fierce but ultimately outmatched. Realizing they had no choice, Hart led the remaining team members out of the chamber. Behind them, the explosives detonated, a deafening roar reverberating through the ship. The EMP generator was destroyed, but Kane's sacrifice weighed heavily on their minds. The tide turns. Back on Earth, Hayes watched as the Sovereign's systems faltered. The EMP countdown ceased, and the Armada's coordination began to break down. "They did it," Hayes whispered, a mixture of relief and awe in his voice. Admiral Greaves issued the next command. "Focus all fire on the flagship. Take it down while they're disoriented." Earth's fleet unleashed a relentless assault on the Dominus Ultima, exploiting the chaos caused by the infiltration team. The Sovereign Armada, once an unstoppable force, now struggled to maintain cohesion. Hope rekindled. As the strike team's shuttle escaped the flagship, Captain Hart looked back at the burning wreckage of the generator chamber. "He didn't die for nothing," she said softly, her voice tinged with sorrow and resolve. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had struck a decisive blow against the Sovereign. The tide was turning, and the message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. The Sovereign's counterstrike. The Sovereign Armada reeled from the loss of the Dominus Ultima's EMP generator, but their retaliation was swift and merciless. Smaller frigates broke from formation, descending into Earth's atmosphere with the precision of guided missiles. Their target wasn't military infrastructure this time. It was humanity's heart. Cities across the globe became battlegrounds. The once bright skyline of Shanghai turned to ash as Sovereign drones descended, their razor-like appendages tearing through buildings. London's historic streets filled with the screams of civilians as evacuation efforts clashed with chaos. The Sovereign's strategy had shifted. They weren't just fighting for dominance. They were fighting to demoralize. A fight on two fronts. At the United Earth Command Center, General Cora Daniels stood before the holographic map of Earth. Red markers flashed where Sovereign forces had breached the atmosphere. Her voice was sharp as she issued orders. "Deploy rapid response units to the major cities. Prioritize civilian evacuations. We can't lose more lives than we have to." Admiral Greaves, standing at her side, nodded grimly. "And the orbital battle." Daniels glanced up at another display, showing the remnants of Earth's fleet engaging the Sovereign warships. "We hold them as long as we can. If they take orbit, we lose everything." In the cyber lab, Dr. Alaric Hayes worked feverishly. "We disrupted their command chain, but their ships are adapting. The Phantom program bought us time, but we need something more, something final." "What are you thinking?" asked Captain Layla Hart, freshly returned from the strike on the Dominus Ultima. Her face was pale, her voice hollow from the loss of Sergeant Kane, but her resolve remained unbroken. "A full system overload," Hayes replied. "If we can amplify the resonance signal to its breaking point, we could fry their entire network. But there's a catch. It might take Earth's systems down with it." Hart folded her arms. "Then we find a way to shield what we need. This ends here." The Phantom's last evolution. Hayes and his team began modifying Phantom, turning it from a stealth program into a weapon of pure disruption. Across the lab, specialists worked in silence, their movements precise and deliberate. Each keystroke carried the weight of Earth's survival. "This isn't just code anymore," Hayes said to his team. "It's our final move. If we fail, there won't be a second chance." As the modifications progressed, an alert sounded in the command center. A Sovereign broadcast had been intercepted. On the screen, Sovereign Executor Tyrax appeared, his crimson eyes burning with fury. "Humans," Tyrax growled, his voice trembling with restrained rage. "Your resistance has become an annoyance. You destroy what you cannot comprehend. But know this, our dominion is eternal. Your planet will serve as an example to all who dare defy us." The transmission ended, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Dax's return. As the lab prepared for the final deployment of Phantom, an unexpected figure strode into the room. Dax, the rogue operative, carried a small, heavily encrypted device. His clothes were torn, and his face was marked with soot, but his eyes gleamed with purpose. "You weren't planning to save the world without me, were you?" he said, tossing the device onto Hayes' workstation. "What is this?" Hayes asked, examining it. "The Sovereign's master encryption key," Dax replied. "Let's just say I found their backdoor while they were too busy trying to kill me." "This changes everything," Hayes said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "With this, we can target their flagship directly, cut off their entire fleet at the source." Hart stepped forward. "What's the risk?" "Massive," Hayes admitted. "If we fail, the Sovereign will retaliate with everything they've got. No mercy, no second chances." Hart nodded. "Then we don't fail." The final gambit. The plan was set. Earth's forces would launch a coordinated assault on the remaining Sovereign ships in orbit, drawing their attention away from the Resolute Dawn. From there, Phantom, enhanced with Dax's encryption key, would be deployed directly into the Sovereign flagship's core systems. "This is it," Admiral Greaves said as he addressed the fleet. His voice carried across every ship, every outpost, every soldier. "Humanity has faced impossible odds before, and we've always emerged stronger. Today, we fight not just for survival, but to show the galaxy what it means to be human. We are relentless. We are defiant, and we will prevail." The fleet erupted in a roar of determination, their resolve unshaken despite the overwhelming odds. The infiltration. As Earth's fleet engaged the Sovereign ships, Hart's team prepared for another infiltration. This time, their target was the Sovereign flagship itself. The Resolute Dawn approached under the cover of Earth's final orbital defenses, its shields flickering as they absorbed enemy fire. Hart's shuttle launched, weaving through the chaos of battle. Inside, the team remained silent, each member focused on their role. Dax glanced at Hart, a rare look of seriousness on his face. "Think we'll make it?" he asked. "We don't have to make it," Hart replied. "We just have to finish the mission." The shuttle latched onto the flagship, and the team breached its hull. Inside, the Sovereign corridors were darker this time, their blue glow flickering sporadically. Phantom had already begun to disrupt their systems. Tyrax's wrath. In the flagship's command center, Tyrax watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. His fleet, once invincible, was now struggling against the human forces. "Activate the purge protocols," he barked. "Burn their planet if you must, but end this now." His subordinates hesitated, their movements sluggish as Phantom spread deeper into the ship's systems. Tyrax turned, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Do it manually if you have to. These creatures will learn their place." The core shut down. Hart's team reached the Sovereign core, a massive sphere of shifting light and energy suspended in the center of the ship. Hayes' modified Phantom device was ready, its algorithms programmed to overload the Sovereign's network. "Plant it and let's get out of here," Hart ordered. As the team set the device, alarms blared throughout the ship. Tyrax's enforcers closed in, their blade-like appendages slicing through the air. Hart and her team fought valiantly, holding the line as Dax activated the device. "It's done," Dax shouted. "We've got 10 seconds. Fall back," Hart ordered, firing one last shot at an advancing enforcer. Victory at a cost. The team barely escaped as the core detonated. The Sovereign flagship shuddered, its systems cascading into failure. Across the Armada, ships faltered and fell, their once coordinated formations breaking into disarray. Earth's fleet pressed the advantage, destroying the remaining vessels one by one. In the aftermath, the Resolute Dawn returned to Earth. The Sovereign threat was gone, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Admiral Greaves addressed the planet in a final broadcast. "Today we proved that humanity is not to be underestimated. We stood together, and together we prevailed." Let this be a reminder to all who dare challenge us. We are not just survivors. We are warriors. As Earth began to rebuild, one thing was certain. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity's spirit could not be broken. The aftermath of fire and steel. The skies above Earth were finally clear, free of the Sovereign's menacing fleet for the first time in days. Debris from destroyed alien ships sparkled like falling stars, burning up in the atmosphere. The silence that followed the battle was both a relief and a haunting reminder of the lives lost. Admiral Elijah Greaves stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, staring out into the vastness of space. The adrenaline that had carried him through the battle was now gone, replaced by an oppressive weight in his chest. Victory had come at a cost, and the price of survival was etched into every face aboard his ship. Behind him, Captain Layla Hart approached, her steps slow and deliberate. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we've received reports from the surface. Civilian casualties are significant." Greaves nodded but didn't turn around. "And the Sovereign flagship?" Hart's gaze darkened. "Completely disabled. What's left of their forces is scattered and disorganized. The Dominion won't be a threat for now." "For now," Greaves repeated, his voice heavy. "They'll remember this day, and they'll either retreat or come back with more. Rebuilding a broken world." On the surface, cities around the globe worked to recover from the Sovereign's assault. In Shanghai, rescue crews combed through the rubble of once thriving skyscrapers. In New York, survivors emerged from underground shelters, their faces pale with exhaustion and grief. Governments worldwide declared states of emergency, pooling resources to rebuild the shattered infrastructure. Dr. Alaric Hayes walked through the ruins of the United Earth Defense Complex, now little more than a skeleton of steel beams and scorched earth. His team had survived the battle, but the lab that housed Phantom was gone, destroyed in the chaos of the attack. "We stopped them," Hayes said aloud, as much to himself as to anyone listening. "But at what cost?" Beside him, Dax leaned against a half-collapsed wall, his arms crossed. "Cost or not, you did it, Doc. Earth's still here. That's more than anyone could have hoped for." Hayes turned to him. "What about you? Are you staying to help rebuild?" Dax smirked, his expression unreadable. "I've never been much for rebuilding, but I'll stick around. At least until the next galactic tyrant shows up." The Sovereign prisoner. On board the Resolute Dawn, a rare prize of war awaited interrogation. A captured Sovereign officer. The creature sat in a reinforced cell, its metallic body restrained by electromagnetic binds. Its elongated face remained impassive, though the faint flicker of its glowing eyes betrayed its unease. Admiral Greaves and General Cora Daniels stood outside the cell, observing the alien in silence. "It's strange," Daniels said finally. "They believe themselves untouchable. Now look at it. Just another prisoner of war." "Not just a prisoner," Graves replied. "A potential source of answers. We need to know more about the Dominion, why they came, what their true intentions are." Inside the cell, the alien's voice echoed, calm yet cold. "You think you've won," it said in perfect English, "but you've only delayed the inevitable. The Dominion's reach extends far beyond your primitive understanding." Greaves stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Then help us understand. Why did you come here? Why did you think you could conquer us so easily?" The alien's eyes narrowed. "Because every species kneels eventually. You are no different. Except we didn't," Graves said, his voice firm. "And we won't." A message from the stars. As the world began to heal, an unexpected signal was detected, a faint, distorted transmission originating from deep space. Dr. Hayes and his team worked tirelessly to decode it, their curiosity outweighing their exhaustion. "It's not Sovereign," Hayes confirmed, his eyes scanning the decoded data. "This is something else." "What kind of something else?" Hart asked, standing beside him. "It's a warning," Hayes replied, his voice growing quieter. From another species, they're warning us about the Dominion. Hart frowned. Why would they warn us after the fact? Hayes shook his head. I don't think it's after the fact. This message could have taken decades to reach us. For all we know, the Dominion's already moving on another world. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's battle might be over, but the war across the galaxy was far from finished. The seeds of unity. In the wake of the Sovereign's defeat, humanity found itself at a crossroads. The battle had proven that Earth's survival depended on global unity, but the scars of old rivalries and mistrust ran deep. In Geneva, leaders from every nation gathered to discuss the future. This wasn't just a victory for Earth. General Daniels addressed the assembly. This was a declaration to the galaxy. Humanity will not be enslaved. But if we're going to stand against threats like the Dominion in the future, we need to remain united. Her words sparked heated debate, but slowly, agreement began to take shape. A new initiative was born. The Terran Alliance, a coalition dedicated to defending Earth and preparing humanity for its place among the stars. The echo of defiance. Admiral Greaves stood alone on the observation deck of the Resolute Dawn, watching as Earth's surface shimmered in the sunlight. Despite the devastation below, there was a sense of hope, a belief that humanity had proven its worth in the eyes of the universe. Hart joined him, her arms crossed. Do you think they'll come back? Greaves didn't answer immediately. If they do, we'll be ready, and they won't find the same Earth they faced this time. Hart smiled faintly. No, they won't. We're not just survivors anymore. We're something more. As the two officers gazed at the planet that fought so hard to protect, a single thought lingered in their minds. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once. It wouldn't make that mistake again. A new beginning. Far beyond Earth's orbit, in the uncharted depths of the galaxy, a lone sovereign ship limped away from the battle. Within its damaged hull, Executor Tyrax seethed with fury. His defeat was an affront to the Dominion's legacy, but his resolve remained unbroken. They think this is over, Tyrax muttered, his crimson eyes narrowing. But this is only the beginning. Back on Earth, as humanity rebuilt and prepared for the challenges ahead, the stars shimmered with promise and peril. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity's defiance, and in the vast expanse of space, new threats and alliances awaited. But if there was one truth the battle had revealed, it was this: humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were fighters, innovators, and survivors. And they were ready for whatever came next.